What if I told you the biblical feast didn't begin with Moses, but with Noah, and they all point to Messiah? Colossians 2:17, which are a shadow of what is to come, but the body of the Mashiach. And what's the shadow? What's the shadow of things to come? The shadow is Mashiach, the Messiah. And what this does is really kind of clarify. It clarifies that these feasts are shadows of things to come, meaning they're forward-looking. That's why I like to refer to them as rehearsals of future fulfillment, particularly as it relates to the fall feast. They are absolutely a rehearsal of future fulfillment. They absolutely align to future events. And these alignments are something that we just simply can't ignore because it's all part of Yahawah's master plan. And his plan will be fulfilled regardless of what man does or doesn't do.
Verse 16, it says, "Let no one therefore judge you in eating or in drinking or in respect of a festival or a new moon or Sabbaths." And verse 17 is like the continuation, which are a shadow of what is to come, but the body of the Messiah. So I just thought that that's a key verse with your topic of conversation today, because it clarifies. This is part of that rhythm that we're talking about, the set apart, appointed times. I mean, there's instruction that we're to receive encouragement, to not feel the weight of anyone that's looking down on us for doing this. He's saying, "Let therefore no one judge you." When
That's right.
when you're adhering to the appointed times. I just thought that was a key verse.
It's absolutely a key verse. And you remind me of something here that all these scriptures that we're referencing, they're certainly for alignment with the topic, but read all the scriptures all the verses surrounding these scriptures for full context. Now, in Jubilees, it's actually the references verses 22 through 38. That was what was on the original slide, but we're not going to read all of those because that's a lot. And so, just for matter of time, but the scriptures on these slides. But I want to just point out a few things for each one, because as we think about these particular two, verses 22 and 23, it's telling us that the appointed times are commanded, they're seasonal, they're eternal. And, these verses simply establish that, Yahawah himself commanded the celebration of appointed times, because he says in their season. And because of that, or in verse 22, that thou shouldest celebrate it in its season. So that means that it's seasonal. It happens on a continual, repetitive type of basis. And these feasts are once a year. And throughout all generations, again, all generations, it mentions that here, throughout their generations. The mention of specific new moons, they're basically marking the four divisions of the year, which we call quarters, yearly quarters, but the four divisions of the year, the seasons of the year. And it shows that what Yahawah has created is an intentional structure. Everything is structured. Everything has rhythm. Everything has a certain timing that he's created. And these days are called days of remembrance. And they're written and ordained as testimony forever, proving the calendar itself is covenantal. It's not cultural. It's all about covenant. This is not a cultural, traditional thing. He has established it as part of his rhythm, his structure. Verses 24 through 28, again, these appointed times, they actually precede what took place on Sinai. They precede what took place with Masha, with Moses. So here's where we learn that Noah himself, Noah, this is where we see where he himself ordained these days as feasts long before Yahawah existed as a nation. And that to me is eye-opening. Yahawah certainly in covenant with the Most High, but the Most High didn't start it there. He started long before Yahawah was even a nation. And so what this does, it proves that the appointed times are creation-based. They're not a Mosaic invention. They weren't created, did not start with Moses. They started long before. And Yahawah, he tied redemptive events like the flood, if you will, and the restoration of the earth. He tied that to specific days, showing that redemption unfolds according to his calendar. Everything's according to Yahawah's calendar, according to Yahawah's timeline.
I would love to chime in on that because I really love this point, and you beautifully described that. And it's actually, sometimes we can get lost even with terminology of the patriarchs. When people say Mosaic law, it's unfortunate sometimes because it now aligns something that's truly about Abba, the Father, and it puts man around it, and now it's like, well, yeah, that makes sense that would be done away with because it's named after Moses, and it's like, nah, it was well before Moses. I love that you pointed that out because when you read what they call the apocryphal books, and again, not hidden for us anymore because we're reading them, but when you read and understand some of the language around just the ancients, they say that a lot in these books, that, man, this is the way of the ancients. The ancients were about this. They knew of these heavenly tablets. The Heavenly Father had a walk with these people that allowed them to know these mysteries, if you will. But it wasn't mysterious to them because they were in alignment with the covenant. They were in alignment with the Heavenly Father's ways. So verse 31 of that same chapter, it says, thus it is engraved and ordained on the tablets of the Shamayam, that's the heavens. And there is no neglecting this command for a single year from year to year. Like that summarizes it right there. Like this is forever. This is why I said, if you're the Father's literally saying, like, I've had this set up before you even walk in the earth, before I even created you. This is heavenly. This is ordained as part of what I do. That's why I'm telling you, and observe it from generation to generation. So yeah, take away the Mosaic status of that because it was well before him. That doesn't tell the story when we can limit it to Mosaic law, right? So anyway, I just love that you pointed that out because that's a really big eye opener, and again brings it back to the origin of these things, which is instituted by our Creator himself, our Heavenly Father himself.
Yeah, and that is something you said there as well. Without these revealed scriptures that were once hidden, it's difficult to come to this alignment because the 66 books don't fully explain the story. And there are gaps. Even though we may not have realized there were gaps, And then when you start to include these revealed scriptures like Jubilees here, it becomes very eye-opening as to exactly what took place anciently, as you mentioned. And that's why Jeremiah basically encourages us to pursue the ancient paths.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's where it is. That's where it's at. The ancient paths is where it's at.
And like you said, he doesn't change. The ancient paths is how he is today. He is ancient, the ancient of days. He doesn't change.
And ancient, we mentioned it last week, but ancient doesn't mean old. In this case, ancient just means original. The original hasn't changed.
That's good.
The original is still the same because he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. If these rehearsals point to Yahawashai, the next question is, when were they given and why were they hidden? Part 4 unveils the heavenly structure of time itself. Click to continue.